The night was silent. The sky above the small town was full of stars, shining like tiny diamonds. On the edge of the town, far away from the noise, a man named Daniel stood on a lonely hill. He often came here at night, just to think, just to breathe. Life had not been kind to him. He had no family near, no close friends. Only the stars gave him comfort. But tonight, the stars looked different. A strange light moved between them, too bright, too smooth to be an airplane. Daniel narrowed his eyes. It glowed like a living thing sliding across the heavens. He felt his heart pound, though he told himself it was only a satellite. Still, the light grew bigger. It was not moving away. It was coming down. The air changed. A heavy silence pressed on his ears. Even the crickets stopped singing. Then, wind rushed over him, wild and strong, though the night had been calm a moment before. Daniel raised his arm to shield his eyes as the light became blinding. And then, with no sound of engines, a massive silver shape appeared above the hill. It floated like a shadow against the stars, its surface smooth, alive with faint blue lines that pulsed like veins. A spaceship. Daniel froze. His mind screamed impossible, but his eyes said real. The ship lowered without a sound, settling onto the ground just a few steps from where he stood. Dust rose in the air. His legs trembled. He wanted to run, yet he could not move. His body refused to obey. A door formed in the side of the ship, glowing with soft light. Slowly, it opened. Out of the brightness stepped two figures. They were women. At least they looked like women. Tall, graceful, their skin pale with a faint silver glow. Their hair shimmered as if woven from light. Their eyes shone with colors no human eyes ever had. One was blue like the ocean at night, the other green like a stormy forest. They walked toward him, their movements too smooth, too perfect. Daniel felt his heart racing. Fear and wonder fought inside him. The first woman smiled, her voice soft but clear. "Do not fear. We come in peace." The second added, "We need your help. Only you can help us." Daniel's lips trembled. Who are you?" The women did not answer directly. They only looked at him, smiling with a strange warmth, though it did not feel like normal kindness. Something about their smiles made his stomach twist. Too calm, too knowing. Still, their beauty and their voices wrapped around him like a net. He felt himself drawn closer, though he did not understand why. "Why me?" Daniel whispered. "Because you are different," the blue-eyed one said. "We have searched and we chose you." Daniel's mouth went dry. The night felt unreal, like a dream. His mind screamed questions, but his heart pounded with a strange excitement. He had always wished for something bigger than his lonely life. And here it was, two beings from the stars standing before him. The green-eyed woman extended her hand. Her fingers were long, graceful, glowing faintly in the dark. "Come with us," she said softly. "We mean no harm. We need only your trust." Daniel hesitated. He looked back at the empty hill, the silent town below. Nobody would believe him. Nobody would even know if he vanished tonight. He took a step forward, then another. The women's faces did not change. They only waited, calm, patient. As he reached the glowing door, Daniel felt a cold shiver down his spine. Inside the ship was only darkness. No lights, no stars, nothing but shadow. For a moment, his body screamed at him to turn back. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. But the women's voices filled his ears again. "Do not fear. Trust us." Daniel swallowed hard. He stepped inside. The air changed immediately, thick, heavy, almost electric. Behind him, the door slid shut with a deep, metallic sound cutting off the night, the stars, the world he knew. Darkness swallowed him. The last thing Daniel heard before silence filled the air was the women's soft laughter. beautiful but not quite human. Inside the ship, the door closed. Behind Daniel with a heavy metallic echo. The sound rang in his chest, final and cold like a lock clicking shut. He turned quickly, but the glowing frame was gone. No door, no light from outside. Only darkness. For a moment, Daniel thought he had gone blind. He reached out his hands, searching for a wall, for anything solid. The air was thick, almost electric, carrying a faint hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then, with a sudden pulse, soft lines of blue light appeared on the walls, stretching down a long corridor. The ship seemed to breathe as if it were alive. The two alien women stood ahead of him, glowing faintly in the dim light. Their silver skin reflected the blue lines of the corridor, making them look unreal, like living statues. They smiled again, calm, patient. "Come," the blue-eyed woman said. Her voice echoed strangely, as though the walls repeated it in whispers. Daniel followed, his footsteps soft against the floor that seemed to ripple under his weight. It wasn't metal. It wasn't stone. It was something else. Something that flexed slightly, as though it were part of a living thing. The corridor stretched longer than it should have. Daniel glanced behind him, but the door, or where the door should have been, was gone. Only endless blue-lit walls surrounded him. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Where are we going?" he asked. "To the heart of our ship," the green-eyed woman said. "There you will understand." Her words gave no comfort. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. He tried to focus on the details. The walls pulsing like veins, the air smelling faintly sweet, like flowers that shouldn't exist. As they turned a corner, Daniel noticed something strange. A small object lay half hidden in a shadow along the wall. He bent quickly to pick it up before the women could notice. It was a wristwatch, a human wristwatch. Old, scratched, and broken. His chest tightened. He turned it over in his palm. The hands were frozen at a time long past. There was dirt on the strap as though someone had dropped it in a hurry. Daniel's stomach twisted. If this was here, then someone else had been here before him. Another human. He slipped the watch into his pocket quickly, hoping the women hadn't seen. When he looked up, they were watching him. Their smiles hadn't changed, but their eyes seemed sharper now, brighter. "Is something wrong?" the blue-eyed one asked gently. Daniel forced a weak smile. "No, nothing." They turned and walked again, but Daniel could not shake the feeling that they had seen everything, that nothing inside this ship could be hidden. The corridor opened into a wide chamber. The ceiling stretched so high it seemed endless, vanishing into darkness. In the center of the room floated a great sphere of light spinning slowly, filled with colors that shifted like liquid fire. Strange symbols glowed around it, moving like living letters. Daniel stared, speechless. The beauty of it pulled him forward. He felt a warmth in his chest, like the sphere was calling to him. The green-eyed woman touched his shoulder gently. "This is our heart, the soul of our ship. Few are allowed to see it." "Why me?" Daniel asked again, his voice shaking. "Because you are different," the blue-eyed one whispered. "Because we trust you." Her words slid into his mind, like honey, sweet and heavy. But deep inside, a small voice screamed, "Do not trust them." Suddenly, from far away, a sound broke the silence. A faint cry, high-pitched human. Daniel froze. The women didn't move. The cry came again, clearer this time. A scream of pain. His blood ran cold. "What was that?" he whispered. The women turned their heads slowly toward him. Their eyes glowed brighter, their smiles never fading. "You hear too much," the green-eyed one said softly. Daniel's heart pounded. He stepped back, his eyes darting to the shadows around the chamber. Somewhere in the darkness, someone was screaming. A human voice. The blue-eyed woman stepped closer, her hand lifting gently toward him. "Do not be afraid. All will make sense, soon." But Daniel was afraid, terrified. The chamber that had seemed beautiful now felt like a trap. The glowing sphere pulsed like a heartbeat, and the walls seemed to close in. He wanted to run. He wanted to shout, but his legs refused to move. The women looked at each other as though sharing a secret thought. Then, in perfect unison, they turned back to him and said in soft voices, "Follow us deeper. There is more to see." Daniel's skin prickled with fear, yet, against his will, he followed. Each step carried him further away from safety, deeper into the heart of a ship that seemed alive and hungry. The hidden prison. Daniel walked through the endless corridors, his footsteps echoing against walls that pulsed with blue light. The two alien women moved ahead of him, silent and graceful, like shadows carved from silver. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their calm smiles were enough to guide him deeper into the ship. But Daniel's mind was not calm. It was screaming. He kept hearing it, the faint echo of that human scream. At first he thought it was his imagination, but the sound returned, thin and sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. Somewhere in this ship a person was in pain. He slowed his steps, letting the women walk ahead. As soon as they turned a corner, he slipped quietly into a side passage. The walls here were darker, the lights weaker. The hum of the ship grew lower like a whisper. Daniel's heart raced. He followed the sound, his hand brushing against the strange walls that seemed to breathe under his touch. Every step took him deeper into the shadows. At the end of the passage, he found a door, if it could even be called that. It was a thin sheet of glowing material, pulsing faintly. He pressed his hand against it. The surface rippled like water and then opened with a soft sigh. Daniel stepped inside. The smell hit him first, damp, metallic, sour. The air was heavy. Then he saw the cages, rows of them, stretching into the darkness. Some were small, some larger, all glowing faintly with strange energy. Inside the cages were figures, humans, yes, but also creatures he had never seen before. Thin bodies with gray skin, others with scales that shimmered, a dozen species all trapped. Daniel froze, his chest tight. His legs felt weak. This was no dream. This was no peaceful visit. This was a prison. A man inside one of the cages raised his head. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. When he saw Daniel, his expression changed to shock, then desperation. He gripped the bars and whispered hoarsely, You're human." Daniel rushed closer, his heart pounding. "Who are you? What is this place?" The man coughed, his voice raw. "A trap. They bring us here, they test us, some never return." "Test you?" Daniel asked, his voice shaking. "Shh." Another prisoner, a woman with tangled hair, hissed from the next cage. "They'll hear you. They're always watching." Daniel's stomach twisted. He glanced around. Tiny glowing spheres floated near the ceiling, their lights shifting like eyes. Were they cameras? Were the women watching even now? The man gripped the bars tighter. "You must escape, if you can. Don't trust them." Before Daniel could respond, the air behind him changed. A soft light spilled into the room. He turned. The two alien women stood at the doorway, their faces calm, their smiles the same as always. But their eyes, those glowing eyes, were sharper now, piercing as if they could see through his soul. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He stepped back, trapped between them and the cages. The blue-eyed woman tilted her head, her voice gentle. "You should not be here," the green-eyed one added softly. "This place is not for you." Daniel's voice cracked with fear and anger. "These people, these prisoners, what have you done to them?" The women did not answer at once. They looked at each other, as if sharing a silent thought. Then the blue-eyed one stepped closer, her silver skin glowing faintly. "They were not chosen," she said simply. Daniel's chest tightened. "Chosen? Chosen for what?" The green-eyed woman's smile widened. "For the game, for the test, for survival. The prisoners shifted in their cages, some whispering, others crying softly. Daniel felt the weight of their fear pressing down on him. His voice trembled. And me? Why am I here? The two women looked at him in unison, their voices blending, like one. Because you are different. That is why we chose you. The words chilled him. The calm in their tone was worse than anger, worse than threat. It was as if everything was already decided. Daniel shook his head, backing away. I don't want this. I don't want any part of this. The blue-eyed woman reached out her hand. Her fingers were long, graceful, glowing faintly. You cannot. Refuse, you are already inside. The choice was made the moment you stepped onto our ship. Daniel's breath came fast. He looked at the cages, at the broken faces watching him. He thought of the wristwatch in his pocket, the proof that another human had been here before him. The prisoners' whispers rose around him like a wind. Run, escape, don't trust them. But Daniel could not run. The women were too close. The cages too many. The ship itself seemed alive, watching, waiting. The green-eyed one stepped closer, her smile never fading. Do not be afraid. Soon you will see the truth. Soon you will understand why you are here. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. Fear burned in his chest, but so did anger. Whatever this game was, he would not let them control him. Not forever. But for now, he was trapped. The women turned, their silver hair glowing in the faint light. Without another word, they gestured for him to follow. Daniel looked once more at the prisoners. Their eyes begged him for hope. He swallowed hard and stepped after the women, the door closing silently behind him. The cages vanished into darkness, but their whispers followed him, echoing in his mind. The game begins. Daniel walked in silence, between the two alien women. His steps were heavy, his mind spinning. The memory of the prisoners burned inside him. Their empty eyes, their whispers begging for help, and the words of the women. They were not chosen. The corridor stretched endlessly until it opened into a new chamber. Daniel froze the moment he stepped inside. It was vast, like an arena. The floor was smooth and black, shining like glass. The ceiling was lost in shadow. Strange glowing symbols floated in the air, shifting and rearranging themselves like living creatures. The walls pulsed with red light, as though the whole chamber had a heartbeat. Daniel felt his chest tighten. This place was not for peace. It was for something else. Something dangerous. The green-eyed woman's voice was soft, but carried across the entire chamber. This is where the chosen are tested. Daniel's throat went dry. He forced his words out. Tested for what? The blue-eyed woman smiled faintly. For survival. A low rumble shook the floor. Daniel's eyes darted to the far side of the arena. A massive gate was opening, its edges glowing with red fire. The air trembled as something heavy moved in the darkness behind it. Daniel stepped back, his heart pounding. No, wait. You can't be serious. The women only watched him, their faces calm, their eyes glowing brighter. From the gate, a roar erupted, deep, animal, hungry. Then it stepped into the light. It was huge, taller than 3 men. Its body was covered in dark armored scales that glistened like wet stone. 4 burning eyes glared at him, and its mouth opened to reveal rows of jagged teeth dripping with thick saliva. Its arms ended in claws sharp enough to slice metal. The Yao beast slammed its claws into the floor and the entire arena shook. Daniel's blood turned to ice. He spun toward the women. You expect me to fight that? I'll die in seconds. The green-eyed woman tilted her head. Perhaps, or perhaps you will surprise us. The blue-eyed one added, show us what makes humans different. The gate behind the beast closed with a thunderous crash. Daniel was trapped. His legs trembled, but instinct screamed at him to move. He sprinted sideways as the beast charged, its claws ripping into the floor where he had stood. Shards of black stone exploded into the air. Daniel ran, his breath ragged, his mind racing. He had no weapons, no plan, just survival. The beast roared again, spinning with terrifying speed. Its claws slashed at him, barely missing his chest. The force of the strike sent him sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through his arm, but he rolled away just as another claw smashed down, inches from his head. He scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting across the arena. There had to be something, anything he could use. His gaze locked on the glowing symbols floating in the air. They shifted constantly, pulsing with strange energy. Daniel remembered the wristwatch in his pocket. A human object left behind. Whoever had owned it had not survived, but maybe he still had a chance. The beast roared and lunged again. Daniel sprinted, leading it toward the cluster of glowing symbols. At the last second, he dove aside. The monster's massive body slammed into the symbols, and the air exploded with light. A blast of energy surged across its scales, making it roar in pain. Daniel's eyes widened. The symbols are alive. They react to contact. Hope sparked inside him. He began to run, circling the arena, dodging claws and teeth. Each time he tricked the beast into smashing into the symbols. Each time the energy burned it, weakening its armor. But Daniel was tiring fast. His lungs burned. His legs ached. The beast, though wounded, was relentless. Finally, with a desperate scream, Daniel ran straight toward the largest cluster of symbols. At the last second, he dropped to the floor and rolled. The beast charged blindly after him, straight into the glowing storm. The chamber erupted in blinding light. The monster let out a deafening roar as its body convulsed, trapped in the energy. The smell of burning scales filled the air. With one final cry, the beast collapsed, its body smoking. Silence fell. Daniel lay on the ground, gasping for air, his body shaking. He had survived. Somehow. The women stepped forward, their silver forms, glowing brighter than ever. Their calm smiles had not changed. The blue-eyed one spoke softly. "Now you see why we brought you here." Daniel looked at them with wide eyes, his voice raw. "You wanted me to fight that thing? For your amusement? For some test?" The green-eyed woman's smile deepened. "Not amusement, proof." Daniel's fists clenched. "Proof of what?" The two women exchanged a glance. Then in voices soft as whispers but sharp as knives, they spoke together. "Proof that you are worthy." Daniel's heart sank. Whatever this was, it was only the beginning. The truth. Daniel stood in the silent arena, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The beast's body lay smoking on the black floor, its armored scales cracked and broken. The smell of burnt flesh lingered in the air. His arms shook, his legs weak, but his eyes burned with fire. He had survived. Against all odds, he was still alive. The two alien women stepped closer, their silver forms glowing in the dim red light. Their faces were calm, their smiles unchanged, as if nothing about the deadly battle surprised them. The blue-eyed woman's voice was soft, almost soothing. "You see now. You are not weak. You are not ordinary." Daniel glared at her, his voice raw with anger. "You put me in a cage with a monster. You wanted me to die." The green-eyed one shook her head slowly. "No. We wanted to see if you would live." Her words cut deeper than claws. Daniel's fists tightened. "And what about the others? The prisoners in those cages? Did they have to fight too? Did they all die for your test?" The women looked at each other, their eyes glowing brighter like twin stars sharing a secret. Then the blue-eyed one lifted her hand. With a flick of her fingers, the arena walls shifted. The smooth black surface dissolved, replaced by a giant hologram that filled the air. Daniel's breath caught as images appeared, worlds upon worlds, planets covered in forests, deserts, oceans, and cities. Each planet was marked with strange glowing symbols. Among them, he saw humans. Images of men and women fighting, running, screaming. Some stood victorious, others fell broken. Daniel's stomach turned. "You've done this before, haven't you?" The green-eyed one nodded calmly. "For centuries, for many races, but humans are rare. Very rare. Daniel's heart pounded. Why us? The blue-eyed woman stepped closer, her glowing eyes locking onto his. Because humans are different. You fight when others surrender. You hope when others give up. You burn brighter than most. Daniel shook his head, his voice cracking. You hunt us. You trap us. And you call that respect? The green-eyed one's voice was calm, almost kind. It is more than respect. It is belief. We believe your kind holds something unique, something even we do not understand. That is why you are tested. That is why you are chosen. Daniel's hands trembled. The images kept shifting around him, human faces full of fear, alien creatures locked in battles, endless tests on endless worlds. His chest ached with anger and grief. He remembered the broken wristwatch in his pocket, the prisoners begging him to escape, the scream he had heard in the darkness. Daniel's voice lowered, heavy with rage. You're not testing us. You're destroying us. You're playing God. The blue-eyed woman's smile softened, though her eyes never lost their sharp glow. Not God. Witness. Guide. We do not destroy. We reveal. Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. Reveal what? The two women spoke together now, their voices blending like one haunting echo. The truth of who you are. The chamber fell, silent again, only the hum of the ship vibrating in the air. Daniel's skin prickled. He hated their calmness, their control. They spoke as if his life and the lives of all those prisoners were nothing more than a story to be written, a game to be played. Finally, the green-eyed one turned, motioning with her hand. A new door opened in the arena wall, glowing faintly. There is more to see. Follow and you will understand. Daniel hesitated, his mind screaming at him to run. But where could he go? The ship was endless, alive, watching him. He clenched, his jaw and followed, his eyes burning with quiet defiance. They led him into another chamber, smaller but filled with strange devices. Tables lined with glowing crystals, chairs shaped like claws, walls covered in moving symbols. At the center stood a tall pillar of light, pulsing like a heartbeat. The blue-eyed woman gestured toward it. This is the archive. Every test, every trial, every survivor is recorded here. Daniel stepped closer, his fists clenched. He saw images flicker across the pillar, faces of humans he did not know, their battles, their victories, their deaths. Each one frozen in the archive like a memory trapped forever. His stomach twisted. So this is it? This is all just entertainment to you? The green-eyed one shook her head slowly. No, this is preparation, a search. A search for the one who will not only survive, but rise. Daniel stared at them, his voice shaking with fury. And what happens to the rest? What happens to the ones who fail? The women did not answer. Their silence said enough. Daniel's heart burned. He wanted to scream, to tear the archive down, to free every prisoner trapped in their cages. But he was only one man, surrounded by two beings who could crush him with a thought. Still a spark lit inside him, a spark of resistance. He turned his gaze to the women, his voice low and steady. You think you've chosen me. You think I'll play your game, but you're wrong. I'm not here to prove myself to you. I'm here to end this. For the first time, their calm smiles faltered, only for a second, but Daniel saw it. The blue-eyed one tilted her head. We shall see. The green-eyed one whispered, Your fire is strong, but fire can burn itself out. The chamber darkened. The pillar of light pulsed faster, brighter. And Daniel knew, whatever test awaited him next, it would be worse than anything he had faced before. The escape plan. Daniel sat in the chamber of the archive, his fists clenched, his heart still pounding. The glowing pillar shifted endlessly, showing faces of humans who had come before him, faces that ended in silence. The alien women stood nearby, calm as always, their silver skin glowing in the dim light. Their patience unnerved him. They never raised their voices, never showed anger. They didn't need to. Control was already theirs, but not forever. Inside Daniel's mind, a plan began to form. If the ship kept records, if it kept prisoners, then it also had weaknesses. Machines could be broken. Doors could be opened. He could not fight the ship alone, but with the prisoners he had a chance. He just had to stay alive long enough to act. That night, or what felt like night inside the endless ship, Daniel returned to the cages. The women allowed him to walk, freely, as though they trusted him completely. But Daniel knew better. Every wall had eyes. Every corridor had ears. Still, when the women left him alone for a moment, he slipped through the shadows. He pressed his palm against the glowing door of the prison chamber. It rippled and he stepped inside. The prisoners looked up immediately, their faces pale, their eyes full of quiet desperation. Some were human, some alien, all broken by fear. Daniel whispered quickly, "Listen to me. I can't save you yet, but I will. When the time comes, you must be ready. Do you understand?" The man he had spoken to before, the one with sunken eyes, nodded weakly. "How? The cages, the ship, they control everything." Daniel pulled the broken wristwatch from his pocket. The old human object glimmered faintly under the cage lights. "Someone else tried before me. Maybe they failed. But I won't." The prisoners leaned closer, hope flickering in their tired eyes. A woman with tangled hair whispered, "If you can free us, we will fight. All of us." Daniel nodded firmly. "Then we have a chance." He began watching carefully. Each day, each moment he studied the women. How they moved, how they opened doors, how the glowing spheres above them responded. He noticed that the cages were linked to small crystal-like nodes at the base of each wall. The nodes pulsed whenever the women passed. If he could find a way to disrupt those nodes, the cages might open. But time was running out. The tests grew harder. Every chamber he was led into forced him to fight, against beasts, against traps, against machines that bent reality itself. His body ached, his mind burned, but he survived. Always the women watched, smiling faintly, whispering to each other in their alien tongue. And then one day, Daniel overheard something. As they led him back to the archive, their voices dropped, but he caught fragments. He is close, stronger than the others, but still human. They knew. They knew he was planning something. That night, Daniel hurried back to the cages, fear pounding in his chest. He whispered his plan quickly, desperate. "I found the nodes. They control your cages. When I give the signal, you must strike them. Smash them if you can. Do not hesitate." The prisoners nodded, their weak voices rising with sudden strength. Hope burned in their eyes. But before Daniel could leave, a sound froze him, a soft hum. A light behind him. He turned slowly. The two women stood at the door. Their eyes glowed brighter than ever, their smiles calm, but sharper. The blue-eyed one spoke softly. "You are restless, Daniel. Too restless." The green-eyed one added, her voice like silk. "We told you to trust us, yet you wander where you should not." Daniel's chest tightened. "You're monsters. You play with lives like toys. I won't be part of it." The women stepped closer, their glowing hair flowing like liquid light. The prisoners backed into their cages, whispering in terror. "You misunderstand," the blue-eyed one said. "We did not stop you. We let you come here. We let you whisper to them." Daniel's eyes widened. His throat went dry. You knew?" The green-eyed one smiled faintly. "Of course. We wanted to see what you would do." Daniel's stomach dropped. Had everything, every step, been part of their plan? But then, the blue-eyed one tilted her head. "Still, we are curious. Will you continue? Will you betray us openly?" Daniel's heart pounded, but fire rose in his chest. He stepped forward, fists clenched. "I won't stop. You can watch me all you like. But one day I'll break this ship apart. And when I do, you'll be the ones trapped." For the first time, their smiles faltered, only slightly, but enough for Daniel to see it. The green-eyed one whispered, "Brave words, dangerous words." Suddenly, alarms blared. The walls flashed red. The ship trembled as though alive. The prisoners cried out, their cages rattling. The women turned calmly toward Daniel, their eyes glowing brighter. "You have spoken your choice," the blue-eyed one said. Daniel's chest burned with fear, but also with defiance. Whatever happened, next he knew there was no turning back. The game was no longer just survival, it was war. Final betrayal and victory. The ship trembled like a living beast in pain. Red lights flashed across the walls, alarms blared, and the floor rippled under Daniel's feet. The prisoners clung to their cages, their voices rising in fear. Daniel's heart pounded. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for. Chaos had begun. The two alien women stood calm in the center of the storm. Their silver hair floated as if touched by unseen winds, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Even as alarm screamed, they did not panic. They smiled, always smiling. The blue-eyed woman spoke softly, her voice cutting through the noise. "We knew this would come. You cannot help yourself, Daniel. Humans never can." The green-eyed one added, "That is why we chose you. Not because you are obedient, but because you resist, because you fight." Daniel clenched his fists, rage burning inside him. "You don't understand. I'm not fighting for your test. I'm fighting for them." He pointed to the cages. The prisoners cried out, hope sparking in their eyes. For the first time, the women's smiles faded. The green-eyed one's voice grew sharper, almost cold. "And if they die in the chaos you unleash, will you still call it freedom?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He had no time for their games. The ship was shaking harder now, the alarms growing louder. He remembered the crystal nodes at the base of the walls, the keys to the cages. He ran. The women didn't stop him immediately. They only watched, their eyes glowing brighter, as if curious to see how far he would go. Daniel skidded to the nearest node and kicked it hard. Sparks burst out and the cage beside it flickered, then opened. A prisoner stumbled free, a thin alien with scaled skin and glowing eyes. "Help me!" Daniel shouted. "Smash the nodes! Free the others!" The alien nodded weakly and crawled toward the next cage. The ship roared in anger, walls shifted, the floor tilted, and strange mechanical arms unfolded from the ceiling, reaching down like claws. Daniel dodged one, rolling across the floor. He grabbed a fallen shard of black stone from the arena and slammed it against another node. Sparks flew again and another cage opened. The prisoners surged forward, their fear turning to fury. Humans, aliens, all together, they struck at the nodes with bare hands, claws, teeth, whatever they had left. One by one, the cages broke, open. The two women finally moved. The blue-eyed one raised her hand and the mechanical arms froze. The green-eyed one stepped closer, her calm smile returning. "Impressive. You turn slaves into soldiers, but soldiers without a leader fall quickly." Daniel raised the shard of stone like a weapon, his voice strong. "Then I'll lead them." The women's eyes glowed brighter, almost blinding now. The green-eyed one whispered, "Then you will die first." They advanced, their silver forms glowing like fire. The prisoners gathered behind Daniel, trembling but ready. The ship itself seemed to roar in anger, the walls twisting, the floor cracking. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Daniel charged, he swung, the shard at the blue-eyed woman, but she moved like lightning, catching his wrist with inhuman strength. Pain shot through his arm, but he kicked her hard, breaking free. The green-eyed one slashed at him with a blade of light forming from her. And Daniel ducked, the blade slicing a burning line across the floor. The prisoners attacked too, throwing themselves at the glowing nodes, tearing at the ship's walls. Each broken node weakened the cages, weakened the ship itself. The blue-eyed woman turned, her calmness finally cracking. "Stop them!" she cried, but Daniel tackled her, slamming her against the wall. For the first time, her smile vanished, her eyes flashing with something new. Fear. "You don't control us anymore," Daniel growled. With all his strength, he drove the shard of stone into the wall beside her. Energy exploded, the chamber shaking violently. The pillar of light in the archive began to crack, its glowing surface splitting apart. The green-eyed woman screamed, not with pain, but with fury. She rushed at Daniel, her glowing blade raised high. At the last second, one of the freed prisoners, a human woman with tangled hair, threw herself in the way. The blade pierced her chest and she fell with a cry. Daniel's rage erupted. He grabbed the blade of light with his bare hands, the energy burning his skin, and twisted it. The weapon shattered, exploding in sparks. The green-eyed woman stumbled back, her perfect calm gone, her face twisted in shock. Daniel turned to the prisoners. "Now, break the archive." Together they hurled stones, claws, and weapons at the glowing pillar. With a deafening crack, it shattered into 1,000 shards of light. The entire ship screamed. The walls buckled, the floor split open, and fire erupted from the ceiling. The two women stood in the chaos, their glowing forms flickering. The blue-eyed one whispered, her voice faint now. "This is not the end, Daniel. We will return. We always return." Then, with a final burst of light, their bodies dissolved into nothing. The ship collapsed around them. Daniel shouted to the prisoners, "Run! Find the exit!" They stumbled through the shaking corridors, guided by the flickering lights of the dying ship. Doors burst open, revealing a path to the outside. With one final roar, the ship crashed, tearing into the earth with a thunderous explosion. Fire and smoke filled the sky. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying on the ground, dirt beneath his hands, the night sky above him. Stars shone faintly through the smoke. Around him, survivors crawled out of the wreckage. Humans, aliens, all breathing, all free. Daniel rose slowly, his body aching, his skin burned, but his spirit unbroken. He looked up at the sky, his voice low, steady. "They came once, they'll come again, and when they do, we'll be ready."